Formula One Drive to Survive Season 3 is out at the moment on Netflix, and it is underwhelming, in my opinion. It is okay, it's alright, you know, it's really good in some places, and then in others, not so much, and for what I thought it was gonna be, you know, with such a whirlwind season that we had in 2020, and so many different storylines that were there to be told from a series like this, I just came away a little underwhelmed. There were some really great bits, don't get me wrong, which I'll go into in this video, but overall, that's my overarching opinion on it. Now, if you never delved into what Drive to Survive is, it is a Netflix series about Formula One. It's been going for three years in a row now, and it's essentially it's a bit of a weird series because it's a docu-series that is meant to try and open up the world of Formula One to more casual fans. So you've also got to have that avid caveat of it's not really made for someone like me, or even probably most of you watching this video. It's not really made for us. It's made for people who maybe aren't at all Formula One fans. They're just browsing on Netflix, or, you know, maybe those kind of fans that only watch the race on Sunday, or just really don't know much about the sport. They don't bother to watch the kind of, you know, intro pieces, the interviews, or bother to read about the sport away from the TV coverage. At the same time, I feel like even from just a storytelling perspective, editing perspective, really, at times it was just a bit weird. And also there were some decisions they made of, you know, what was in it and what was not. And, you know, I don't know about the certain logistics of what races they chose, but there were some things that were just blaringly just missing that kind of left it kind of a little bit, I don't know, just incomplete as a kind of series delving into the deep parts of last season and kind of giving you that kind of more emotive feeling of the sport. But like I said, there were some really awesome parts of this series, and overall, I would say, even though it's underwhelming, I still enjoyed my time watching it. It was just kind of essentially, I felt I was expecting something up here, and I got something about here, which was still enjoyable. It doesn't mean that that's not enjoyable, but I was kind of expecting a bit more. I would say episodes 1 and 2 are a bit disjointed in terms of the storytelling, but I don't know if that's because, you know, obviously episode 1 kind of covered pre-season and pre-pandemic and lockdowns, and then episode 2 was F1 returning, so I'm not sure, maybe they just didn't get access to, you know, things they could record, basically. They, you know, they kind of glossed over how F1 survived lockdown and whatnot, but I guess that's not the point of the series. And then episode 2, even though it was great at the very end, especially with Lando Norris's podium and kind of seeing the inside of that, it was just a bit, I felt disjointed in a way, but maybe they just didn't get the access and full access at that early point in the season where everyone was very cautious on, obviously, COVID and all the restrictions, basically. Episodes, well, 3 was just there for me personally. Episodes 4 to 6 for me personally were really, really enjoyable. You had the kind of Ferrari episode with episode number 4, 5 was Ricciardo and Renault, and 6 was Gasly and AlphaTauri and the kind of whole comeback story in the Italian Grand Prix. I thought all 3 of those did a much better job at telling a story, and I'll kind of go more into detail a little bit later in the video, but those did a really good job for me. Episode 7 was all about Haas, and so I guess that was fun. And then the last 3 episodes, 8 was decent, I would say. 9, I think, was very powerful because it was all about that, mainly about that Bahrain Grand Prix race where Grosjean had that very, very horrific crash, and it was, you know, it kind of brought back the emotions that I think all of us had at the time of, you know, oh my god, like what an insane crash. And then episode number 10 was a bit weird. Again, disjointed. I felt like they tried to make too much of what was there from the finale. Like the way they portrayed like Ocon finishing like 9th or whatever it was, seemed like it was a massive like win and coup for them. And then just, I don't know, I think they feel like it was just a bit overdone on the finale, a tad maybe, and then it did end on a really nice, powerful message with Lewis Hamilton ending off what he wants to bring to Formula One going forward in the future, which I thought was good. That's my quick take on all the episodes. I'm going to go more into depth in a sec, but yeah, it's not really made for someone like me or maybe a lot of you guys watching, so you've got to take it with a pinch of salt. It is number 1 at the moment on UK Netflix, so they're clearly doing something correct. And to be honest, if I wasn't a fan of F1 and I didn't know about the kind of, you know, slight truth bending or over dramatizing, or if I even as like I don't think you even have to be someone that knows, you know, a little bit of video editing. I think any F1 fan will just find the editing a little bit weird because you'll hear like weird engine sounds still there, and they've done it from season 1. But I feel like a series like Drive to Survive, they started off in seasons 1 and 2, especially 1. It was like, here's this brand new concept series of bringing you a Formula 1 docuseries, and it's going to be trying to get loads of fans in, and it did, and it's still going to do that because it's clearly working. Number 1 on UK Netflix is a big deal because that's not just F1 fans watching, that's so many other people watching the series, getting it to number 1 above so many other big shows on Netflix at the moment over this weekend. But I feel like there needs to be, I don't know, from my perspective, there should be a little bit of an evolution of this series as we go on. If they're going to continue making it, I feel like they need to then sort of almost be a bit more self-aware and realize that, yeah, okay, you started off making the series for non-F1 fans completely to get them in the sport, but now you are going to have some F1 fans that are watching it because, you know, it's a docuseries about their favorite sport. So in certain aspects, like the audio editing with the engines whizzing by and some of the camera shots, like I think episode 2 when Lando was getting towards his podium, there was a moment where like you could clearly see he was going through into the last corner, and it like happened like 5 times with like inboard shots. And I know that's not a new thing in the editing. That's been there from season 1, but I feel like there should have been an evolution of that style to kind of dumb it down a little bit less as we go on through the years, while still trying to keep it somewhat, obviously, you know, jumpy. I guess they have to do it to keep people's attention span. And, you know, those people that don't really watch F1, they just need that quick hook of like quick camera shots of a car flying past and, you know, all the time to keep their mind in check. But I just feel like I feel like it was more glaringly obvious in a way this season for some reason compared to the other ones. And in terms of extra behind the scenes stuff, there is some really juicy stuff. I would say, you know, things like episode 4 with Sebastian Vettel, you know, even, you know, seeing like I said, 4, 5, and 6 are my personal favorites in terms of storytelling they did. In terms of, you know, little tidbits between Cyril and Ricardo, or you got Gasly and Horner and what he's saying. Even also, like I said, in episode 2, just seeing the behind the scenes and more in-depth look at, you know, McLaren and how that, you know, reaction was to Lando's podium and things like that. Did give some good insight, but there's also a lot of things that if you're a regular Formula 1 fan, you probably will kind of already know. You may have read about the quote in somewhere, and then you're now just seeing it verbally, or some things are just adding some context. So it's not like a shock horror bit behind the scenes, but it's just adding some context to something you already know has kind of gone down, essentially, with, you know, let's say Vettel and Ferrari. Like that was a really interesting episode in my opinion. But taking the F1 specs off, it is still a good job of sucking people in. I definitely think, and I've already seen reactions online of people that aren't F1 fans, or like they're kind of the fans that maybe watch just the race and they don't really bother watching much of quali. They might tune in once or twice and that's it, and they're hooked on the series. So I think it does still a stellar job. So it's no kind of, you know, negative on that. The guys who make it have done a stellar job of what it was meant to be in the first place. I just feel personally it should have been evolving slightly, just a bit, not too much, because obviously you've got to keep it casual for the casual fans it's made for, but there should have been that evolution, I think. There was some also big things they just missed that I would have rather have seen in this series, and so those things are pretty obvious if you just look through the episode list. So the biggest thing was maybe, like for a lot of people, George Russell's Sakir race, that they just didn't follow him. I know there's maybe logistics of they choose certain races to follow certain teams and whatnot, but I feel like they should in the future be a lot more agile in what they're doing, in terms of they should be able to quickly decide, oh, you know what, this is a massive development, you know, Lewis Hamilton's got COVID, Russell's stepping in, we need to switch focus and film some stuff about this because that's a massive plot point of the series, or you know, of the season, basically. And that's a big thing that people would be interested in. You know, that's one of the craziest things that happened in a while in terms of like a mid-season driver change of that kind of magnitude of, you know, fan favorite of Russell stepping into the World Championship car. Turkey was not there. Turkey was an insane race, and I just feel like in terms of the history of the season, that's where Lewis Hamilton sealed his 7th world title. So it's just a bit odd that was completely just not there. There was like a brief mention of it when they were talking about Stroll at the end of the series, but that again was a bit odd, not just because the race was good, just because of that history mark of Hamilton getting the 7th title. It would have been sick to get an interview and see more insight into how he was feeling. Also, Williams leaving the kind of family aspect of F1. Obviously, Williams is still there in the sport, but the Williams family are no longer involved with Williams, and so I think that could have been its own episode, really. Just, some of the episodes are only 38 minutes long, so a 38-minute episode piece of, Williams and, seeing what it means to them to leave the sport. I think that's a whole big story in its own. I think a lot of people would have really liked that, because that's an emotional story. Again, a reason why I loved episode 9, because of course it's just so emotional, but it's sick, obviously, knowing now Grosjean's all fine. It's kind of nice to watch it back and just be like, it's such a good feel moment. And the same thing with like episode 6, where Gasly won, and the Italian Grand Prix. That was really nice to see that emotion. You also had a really poetic moment before when he was doing a track walk and he went to that same place where Hubert had the crash, and it was telling the story about how he sent him a text when he got demoted saying go and show them wrong. And then this season you've got all the backlash with Horner and what he's saying about him and Albon. It was really good. So I think like that kind of treatment to something like Williams leaving the sport as a family aspect is sorely missed, I think. I think that's a missed opportunity. I think that would have been a really good episode, really poignant episode. You also got other things that happen in the season that, I don't know, I think the story is maybe not as strong, as it's not easier to tell, but you think got things like obviously Honda shocking the entire paddock saying they're going to leave, and so that kind of left Red Bull in a freefall. Were there certain behind the scenes conversations between Renault and Red Bull, for example? Because I know they sometimes publicly came out and Renault was saying, if we have to supply Red Bull, we will do at the end of the day, and things like that. Were there some small behind the scenes talks that could have been quite juicy to see about that, or the panic for Horner basically? Because the entire time of this entire series, Horner's just there stirring up stuff and just sounding arrogant. So it'd be cool to see if when Honda exited, was he like literally shitting bricks in terms of, oh god. And then also you had Hulkenberg coming back into the sport 3 times on 3 separate occasions into Formula 1. I don't know how much of a storytelling you can tell, because it's just a case of they got Hulkenberg in, but that's still pretty sick as like a story event. And I think I would have rather seen an episode on that rather than that episode 3 on Bottas, which was interesting to see Bottas's side of the coin. And looking at episode 3, it was intriguing. You kind of do feel a little bit for Valtteri of how it is to go up against someone that is as good as Lewis Hamilton, but it was also an episode that I just wasn't that interested in. I was like, I don't really care too much about this story because there were other stories that were way more interesting. That's my overall sort of just reaction to the series, really. Like I said, I enjoyed watching it. It doesn't mean that, I can still say I feel that it was underwhelming, because I felt like there could have been, as I said, so many other things that were in it, and just a better story could have been told in certain episodes. Overall, still enjoyed it. It's obviously not really, pictured towards me. It's number 1 on Netflix UK, so it's doing the job, really. If we're well and truly, honest with ourselves, it's doing the job it needs to do, and it definitely will bring in probably new fans, more fans, which is great for the sport. Oh yeah, that's my sort of structured, not so structured review or reaction or what. I just wanted to talk about Drive to Survive basically, because I never talked about it on the channel in seasons 1 and 2 for the last 2 years. I thought now was a good time to jump on the third one and talk about it, especially since, we had such a whirlwind last year. Like I said, that's why I feel a bit underwhelmed, because I thought it was such a whirlwind year last year that there were going to be some other things. But there you go. Overall, still enjoyed it. Didn't feel like a waste of my time. It was nice to see, like I said, some really juicy bits and episodes I did enjoy. Let me know what you guys made of it, though, in the comments below. If you're new around here, then do get subscribed for weekly Formula 1 content. I'll see you guys next time. Goodbye.